Neville feels left out. One morning, Neville met James at Abbey Station. "Have you heard about the opening of the new museum?" puffed James. "We're not having a repaint. I should look wonderful with a brand new coat of red paint." "I've not heard about that," said Neville. "Why hasn't the Fat Controller told me?" "You must have been left out," shuffled James, and he steamed away. James, of course, was only teasing, but Neville believed him. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept worrying about what James had said. "Why hasn't the Fat Controller told me about the museum?" he wondered. "Why have I been left out?" By the next morning, Neville thought he knew the answer. He met Toby at Ellsford Station, who was delivering supplies for him to take to Kildane. "Have you heard about the museum?" asked Neville. "Yes," puffed Toby. "Sir Topham Hatt told me about it last night. We're all being repainted." "I'm not," puffed Neville sadly, "but I think I know why. I'm the only member of my class left in service. Maybe the Fat Controller has decided to put me inside the museum." Toby just laughed. "The Fat Controller would never do that," puffed Toby. "The reason he didn't tell you was probably because you were in a different location and that you would have left for work before he could tell you. Just ask him yourself. He'll tell you outright." But Neville was frightened of what the Fat Controller might say. "Must go," puffed Toby. "Really useful engines or really busy ones." And he chuffed away. Neville thought for a moment. "I'll show the Fat Controller he can't put me in a museum," said Neville. "I'll show him I'm just as useful as I've always been." Neville arrived at Tidmouth Sheds. The Fat Controller was talking to Emily. "Emily, you must go to the yard for your repaint," said the Fat Controller. Emily was very happy. "Now, who can I get to take your flour?" Sir Topham Hatt thought. "I'll do it, sir," said Neville quickly. "Thank you," smiled the Fat Controller. "Oh, and one more thing," but before he could say anything else, Neville steamed off. He didn't want the Fat Controller to tell him he was going to be put in the museum. Neville waited impatiently at the flour mill. Hurry up, he wished. "I must get to the docks as soon as I can." "Be patient," said his driver. "The trucks will be loaded soon." Soon the trucks were ready, and Neville steamed away before the guard had time to blow his whistle. When Neville delivered the flour, he saw the Fat Controller standing on the dockside. He was talking to the dockmaster. Then the Fat Controller saw Neville. He wanted to speak to him, but Neville steamed off as fast as he could. Later, Neville saw Thomas and Toby at Knapford Station. "We're off for our repaint," chuffed Thomas happily. "I can pull Annie, Clarbo, and Henrietta for you," said Neville. "Thank you, Neville," chuffed Toby. So Neville pulled Annie, Clarabo, and Henrietta on Thomas's branch line. And for the rest of the day, when another engine was in for a repaint, Neville did that engine's job. He pulled Duck and Oliver's local trains. He pulled Edward's passenger trains. He pulled Percy's Daily Mail. He pulled Molly's coal trains. He pulled James and Emily's local trains. He pulled Henry and Murdoch's heavy goods trains. And he even pulled the express for Gordon. His final job for the day was shunting trucks full of stone in the quarry for Mavis, even though it was dusty, dirty work. At last, Neville had finished. He was very tired and very dirty. Suddenly, he saw the Fat Controller waiting by the track. Neville still didn't want to speak to the Fat Controller. Quickly, he reversed into a siding and didn't see that a big rock had fallen on the line. bust my buffers, he cried. Luckily, no one was seriously hurt, but Neville's axle and tender were broken. He couldn't move. The Fat Controller hurried over. "Why have you been running away from me all day?" he asked. I don't want to be put in a museum," said Neville sadly. "Why would I do that, Neville?" asked the Fat Controller. "Because a museum is full of old things, and I'm the only Q1 left in service, and I'm not really useful anymore." The Fat Controller smiled. "Neville, you may be the only Q1 still in service, but that's because you are far too useful to be put in a museum. You have worked harder today than any other engine, and as Shunter's most unique engine, I have a very special job for you. First, you will have a special polish. Then you are to take all the visitors to the museum for the grand opening." Neville felt very happy. He let out a great whoosh of steam. "I've been trying to tell you that all day," added the Fat Controller. Neville smiled. He felt very silly. Sir, could I make one suggestion?" "Oh, what would that be?" So Neville's axle and tender were repaired, and then he was polished until he looked as good as new. On the day of the museum opening, Neville picked up the visitors at the docks in 2 special black coaches. Then, Toby backed onto Neville. "Hello, Neville," he chuffed. "The Fat Controller said you asked if I could help you with your special train." "I did," said Neville. "It's my way of saying thank you." "Thank you? For what?" "For helping me with my train when I needed it." "What are you... Hang on a minute. I remember meeting a Q1 back in 1943. He was black just like Neville, and he had a similar face." "Neville, are you sick?" "Yes, Toby, I am." Toby was speechless. He didn't say a word for the rest of the journey. Soon the guard blew his whistle, and Neville and Toby puffed proudly. Neville was proud to be old, and he was even prouder to be the only Q1 on the island of Soda.